What if I told you there are animals so rare and absurdly expensive, not even Elon Musk could own them? From the majestic white lion cubs to the world's most trafficked pangolin to the distinctive Dabratzas monkeys, these are 8 pets reserved for no one, no matter how rich. Starting with white lion cubs. The white lion is a creature so ethereally beautiful that it seems almost mythical, with a pristine white coat that gleams like fresh snow under the African sun, piercing eyes that seem to hold ancient wisdom, and a presence so majestic that local communities have revered it as sacred for generations. Despite their breathtaking beauty and the astronomical sums people might be willing to pay, these magnificent creatures remain firmly beyond the reach of even the world's wealthiest individuals. While regular lion cubs may cost around $5,000, white lion cubs can fetch up to $15,000 or more, and in some extraordinary cases, prices have been cited as high as $140,000, reflecting their incredible exclusivity and the substantial costs associated with their specialized care requirements. But here's where the story becomes truly fascinating. Price tags become completely irrelevant when the item in question is protected by an intricate web of international and national laws that make ownership virtually impossible. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, a CITES, lists lions under Appendix 2, with a zero export quota for certain wild lion parts, severely restricting commercial trade. This isn't just bureaucratic red tape. It's a deliberate global effort to protect these extraordinary animals. The white lion's rarity stems from a fascinating genetic phenomenon. They are not a separate species but a rare color variant of the African lion, Panthera leo, caused by a recessive genetic trait called leucism, which results in their distinctive white fur. Unlike albinism, leucism doesn't affect the eyes, which remain their normal golden color. This trait requires both parents to carry the recessive allele, making white lions extremely rare in the wild and in captivity. The legal barriers surrounding white lion ownership are staggering in their complexity and thoroughness. Many countries, including various US states, have laws banning or heavily regulating the ownership of exotic animals like lions. Even in jurisdictions where some exotic animal ownership might be permitted, the specific protections afforded to lions, and particularly white lions, create virtually insurmountable legal obstacles. What makes the white lion story even more compelling is the role of conservation organizations like the Global White Lion Protection Trust, which focuses on protecting white lions in their natural habitat, reducing their availability for private ownership. Since 2002, the Trust has worked tirelessly to reintroduce white lions to their natural habitat in the UNESCO Kruger Canyons biosphere region in South Africa. Their efforts include rigorous scientific monitoring and strict protocols to ensure cubs are raised naturally by their mothers, not traded or sold to private collectors. Perhaps most telling of all is the simple fact that fewer than 20 white lions remain in their natural habitat, making each individual absolutely crucial to the species' survival. When you're dealing with numbers this small, every single animal becomes irreplaceable from a conservation standpoint. Asian arowana. In the crystalline waters of Southeast Asian rivers swims a creature so revered, so mystically significant, and so extraordinarily valuable that it has earned the moniker Living Dragon. The Asian arowana, with its gleaming metallic scales, graceful barbels, and undulating swimming motion that eerily resembles a dragon in flight, represents one of the most fascinating examples of how cultural significance and legal protection can render even the most coveted creatures completely untouchable, regardless of one's financial resources. But what truly sets this creature apart isn't just its price tag, it's the absolutely staggering amounts that people have been willing to pay for exceptional specimens. An albino arowana reportedly sold for $300,000 in 2009, and similar prices persist for top specimens today. In some extraordinary cases, a platinum arowana was valued at $430,000, making it quite possibly one of the most expensive fish ever priced. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn that renders all these price tags completely meaningless. In countries like the United States, owning or trading Asian arowanas is illegal under the Endangered Species Act and CITES regulations, which ban trade in endangered species except for specific purposes like research. This creates the absolutely unique situation where billionaires in certain countries literally cannot spend their money on these fish, no matter how desperately they might want to own one. The cultural significance that drives these astronomical valuations is deeply rooted in Asian tradition and belief systems. In many Asian cultures, particularly particularly in China, the fish's resemblance to a mythical dragon, complete with large shimmering scales and whisker-like barbels, makes it a symbol of good luck, wealth and power. In feng shui, the fish is believed to balance yin and yang energies, attract wealth and protect its owner from misfortune. Some myths even suggest that an arowana will sacrifice itself to warn its owner of danger, further enhancing its mystique. The lengths to which some owners go to maintain their prized arowanas adds another surreal dimension to this story. In Singapore, fish beauticians like Eugene Ng, known as Dr. Ark, perform procedures such as eye lifts $90, chin jobs $60, and tail alterations $60 to enhance the fish's appearance. These cosmetic surgeries for fish underscore just how valuable these creatures are considered to be by their devoted collectors. The practical challenges of owning an Asian arowana extend far beyond their acquisition cost. These fish can grow up to 3 feet long, requiring large aquariums, often 300 gallons or more, and precise water conditions. Their predatory nature means they need live or frozen food and cannot coexist with smaller fish. The specialized care requirements create ongoing expenses that can be substantial even for wealthy collectors. Tiger. There exists perhaps no creature on Earth that embodies raw power, untamed beauty, and primal majesty quite like the tiger. With their distinctive orange coat decorated with bold black stripes, piercing amber eyes, and a presence that commands instant respect, tigers have captivated human imagination for millennia. Yet despite their magnetic appeal and the astronomical sums that wealthy individuals might be willing to spend, tigers remain firmly beyond the reach of private ownership, protected by an increasingly sophisticated web of laws, ethical considerations, and practical impossibilities that render them utterly unpurchasable. The financial commitment required to even attempt tiger ownership is staggering beyond comprehension. The initial purchase price for a tiger cub can range from $7,500 for a standard orange tiger to over $100,000 for rare, stripeless white tigers. But this initial cost represents merely the tip of an enormous financial iceberg that extends far deeper than most people could ever imagine. A secure enclosure, required to meet safety and welfare standards, costs at least $100,000, as tigers need large spaces, often acres, to thrive. This isn't just a large fence. We're talking about fortress-like constructions with reinforced materials, escape-proof design, and extensive safety features that would make a maximum security prison seem modest by comparison. What makes tigers truly unpurchasable, even for the world's wealthiest individuals, is the convergence of all these factors: astronomical costs, increasingly strict legal prohibitions, serious safety risks, growing ethical opposition, and the recognition that these magnificent creatures belong in the wild or in accredited conservation facilities, not in private collections. Even unlimited financial resources cannot overcome the legal, ethical, and practical barriers that have been erected to protect both tigers and the public from the inherent problems of private big cat ownership. De Brazza's monkeys. In the dense, mist-shrouded forests of Central Africa lives one of the most distinctive and enigmatic primates on Earth, De Brazza's monkey. De Brazza's monkeys, also known as swamp monkeys or De Brazza's guénons, are old-world primates native to Central Africa's riverine and swamp forests. What makes them particularly fascinating is that they are the largest species in the guénon family, yet their elusive nature and specialized habitat requirements have made them among the most challenging primates to maintain in captivity. The legal framework surrounding De Brazza's monkeys creates an virtually impenetrable barrier to private ownership. De Brazza's monkeys are listed under Appendix 2 of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, CITES. This international agreement means that any international trade, including for the pet trade, requires permits that are typically issued only for conservation, research, or zoological purposes. Private individuals seeking to own these monkeys face stringent requirements that make legal acquisition nearly impossible. What makes De Brazza's monkeys particularly challenging as potential pets is their incredibly specialized care requirements that go far beyond what even wealthy individuals can typically provide. These monkeys are omnivorous, primarily eating fruits and seeds, supplemented with leaves, mushrooms, and insects. Providing a balanced diet requires access to specialized foods that can be extremely costly and logistically challenging to maintain consistently. As arboreal primates, they need large, enriched enclosures that replicate their natural forest environment, including climbing structures and dense vegetation. These aren't simple cages. We're talking about complex, multi-level environments that require significant space, specialized construction, and ongoing maintenance that can cost tens of thousands of dollars to establish and maintain properly. The ethical considerations considerations surrounding Debratza's monkey ownership have become increasingly prominent in conservation and animal welfare circles. The pet trade often involves illegal capture of wild animals, contributing to wildlife trafficking. Debratza's monkeys are sometimes taken from their habitats for this purpose, which harms wild populations and raises serious ethical concerns. Additionally, primates can carry zoonotic diseases transmissible to humans, posing health risks to owners and their communities. These health considerations add another layer of complexity and risk that even unlimited financial resources cannot completely eliminate. The rarity of Debratza's monkeys in captive breeding programs further reinforces their unpurchasable status. Unlike some other exotic animals, Debratza's monkeys are not commonly bred for the pet trade. Most captive populations are housed in zoos or sanctuaries under strict conservation programs, reducing the number of animals available for private purchase. Even the wealthiest person in the world would find themselves facing insurmountable barriers of law, ethics, and practical impossibility when it comes to acquiring these remarkable primates. Savanna cats. In the exotic pet world, few creatures capture the imagination quite like the savanna cat, a stunning hybrid that bridges the gap between the wild African savanna and the domestic living room. With their spectacular spotted coats reminiscent of their wild serval ancestors, impossibly long legs that seem to stretch toward the sky, enormous ears that give them an almost otherworldly appearance, and dog-like personalities that defy conventional cat behavior. Savanna cats represent one of the most remarkable examples of how breeding complexity, legal restrictions, and astronomical costs can make even the most coveted pets virtually unattainable for all but the most determined and wealthy collectors. The breeding process behind savanna cats is so complex and costly that it fundamentally drives their extraordinary price points. The hybridization of a domestic cat with an African serval, a wild feline, presents multiple challenges, including different gestation periods, approximately 75 days for servals versus 65 days for domestic cats, leading to premature births for F1, first-generation savannas. These kittens often require intensive care to survive, with small litter sizes, typically 1-3 kittens, further limiting supply. The initial investment required to even begin a savanna cat breeding program is staggering. Breeders must purchase a serval, costing around $5,000, and a suitable domestic cat such as an F3 or F4 savanna, or another breed which can cost $3,000, $5,000. This initial investment alone can total $9,000 or more, and that's before any successful breeding has even occurred. The unpredictability of the breeding process adds another layer of expense and complexity. The price ranges for savanna cats reflect their rarity and the generation from which they come. F1 savannas with 50% serval ancestry are the rarest and most expensive, often priced between $10,000 and $25,000 or more, with some reaching $50,000 in exceptional cases. Later generations, F2, F8, are less costly but still pricier than most domestic breeds, ranging from $1,000 to $12,000 depending on the generation and quality. Legal restrictions create a complex patchwork of regulations that can make savanna cats completely illegal in certain areas, regardless of one's ability to pay. In the United States, states like Nebraska, Georgia, Hawaii, and Massachusetts ban savanna cats entirely or restrict ownership to later generations, for example F4 or higher. Other states, such as Texas, require strict permits that are difficult to obtain. The regulations limit the number of potential owners and increase the operational costs for breeders, who must comply with licensing, permits, and documentation requirements. International restrictions add another layer of complexity, with countries like Australia largely prohibiting F1 savannas due to biosecurity and wildlife protection laws. The behavioral requirements of savanna cats, particularly early generations, make them unsuitable for most households, even wealthy ones. Savanna cats, especially F1S, are high energy and require significant time, space, and enrichment. They need large enclosures, ample playtime, and owners experienced with exotic animals. This limits the pool of suitable buyers, as even wealthy individuals may not have the time or environment to meet these demanding needs. The savanna cat thus represents a fascinating case study in how breeding complexity, legal restrictions, care requirements, and breeder selectivity can combine to create barriers that wealth alone cannot overcome, making these magnificent hybrids truly challenging to acquire, even for the world's most affluent individuals. Pangolins. Imagine a creature so unique, so evolutionarily distinct that it seems almost mythical, covered head to tail in overlapping keratin scales that resemble medieval armor, capable of rolling into an impenetrable ball when threatened, and possessing a tongue longer than its own body that it uses to feast on ants and termites with surgical precision. This is the pangolin, often called the scaly anteater, and despite being one of the most trafficked mammals on Earth with black market values that would make precious metals jealous, these extraordinary creatures remain absolutely, completely, and utterly unpurchasable by even the wealthiest individuals on the planet. The tragic irony of the pangolin situation is that their incredible value in illegal markets directly contributes to their complete unavailability in legal ones. Pangolin scales can fetch over $3,000 per kilogram on the black market, driven by demand in traditional Chinese medicine, despite the complete lack of scientific evidence supporting their medicinal properties. Their meat is considered a delicacy, with restaurants in Vietnam charging up to $150 per pound. In some cases, pangolins are killed in front of diners to prove authenticity, further driving demand for live animals. To understand the scope of this illegal trade, consider that the global wildlife trafficking market is estimated to be worth $19 billion annually, with pangolins accounting for up to 20% of this trade. Poachers in Africa and Asia sell pangolins to middlemen for $168, $217, who then resell them for $1,500, $2,500. This markup reflects not just the risks involved in trafficking, but the absolutely insatiable demand that drives this illegal market. The conservation status of pangolins tells a heartbreaking story of exploitation. All 8 pangolin species are listed on the IUCN Red List, with statuses ranging from vulnerable to critically endangered. Estimates suggest that 10,000 to 100,000 pangolins are poached annually, with over 1 million poached in the decade prior to 2014. These numbers represent one of the most devastating examples of wildlife exploitation in modern history. What makes pangolins truly unpurchasable is the comprehensive legal framework that has been erected to protect them. All pangolin species are protected under Appendix 1 of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, CITES, which prohibits international commercial trade. This global ban, strengthened in 2016 at the 17th CITES Conference of Parties, makes it illegal to buy or sell pangolins or their parts for commercial purposes. National laws have followed suit with increasingly strict protections. China's 2020 decision to ban pangolin scale use in traditional Chinese medicine represents a significant shift, removing legal demand in one of the world's largest markets for pangolin products. These legal barriers mean that even the wealthiest individuals cannot legally purchase pangolins anywhere in the world. The enforcement efforts surrounding pangolin protection demonstrate how seriously the international community takes their conservation. Law enforcement and conservation organizations actively combat pangolin trafficking. The International Anti-Poaching Foundation, IAPF, conducts raids to rescue pangolins, and the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, works to reduce demand through awareness campaigns. High-profile seizures, such as cases where traffickers were arrested for attempting to sell a pangolin for $10,000, demonstrate the serious risks involved in illegal trade. These enforcement efforts create a climate where even attempting to purchase a pangolin illegally carries enormous risks. For wealthy individuals, the risks extend far beyond legal consequences. Attempting to purchase a pangolin illegally would result in serious reputational damage, especially given the high public profile that often accompanies extreme wealth. Pangolins represent perhaps the most tragic example on our list, creatures so valuable that they are being driven to extinction by that very value, yet so completely protected by law and conservation necessity that they remain entirely beyond the reach of legal acquisition, regardless of financial resources. Even unlimited wealth cannot overcome the reality that purchasing a pangolin would be both illegal and directly harmful to one of the world's most endangered animal groups. Chimpanzees. Among all the creatures that wealth cannot acquire, perhaps none strikes closer to home than our closest living relatives, chimpanzees. With their expressive faces that mirror human emotions, remarkable intelligence that allows them to use tools and solve complex problems, and social behaviors that eerily reflect our own family dynamics, chimpanzees represent one of the most poignant examples of how legal protections, ethical considerations, and practical impossibilities can render even our nearest evolutionary cousins completely off limits to private ownership, regardless of financial resources. The legal landscape surrounding chimpanzee ownership has become increasingly restrictive, creating barriers that even unlimited wealth cannot overcome. In the US, 22 states have banned keeping big cats as pets, and 9 states prohibit all dangerous exotic animals, while only a handful of states allow any form of great ape ownership, and even then with extensive permit requirements and restrictions. The federal picture has become even more restrictive. The proposed Captive Primate Safety Act, H.R. 8164 S. 4206, seeks to prohibit private ownership and interstate commerce of non-human primates for the pet trade, reflecting growing recognition of the impossibility of maintaining these animals humanely in private settings. Additionally, the Endangered Species Act, ESA, includes provisions that limit the use of chimpanzees, creating federal barriers to acquisition. High-profile incidents have dramatically tightened regulations and public awareness. The 2009 attack by Travis, a chimpanzee owned by Sandra and Jerome Herald in Connecticut, led to a state law prohibiting ownership of primates weighing over 50 pounds. This tragic incident, which resulted in severe injuries to a human and the death of Travis, crystallized public understanding of the inherent dangers of keeping these powerful animals as pets. Internationally, the picture is similarly restrictive. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, CITES, effective since 1975, classifies chimpanzees as Appendix I species, granting them the highest level of protection against trade. Despite this protection, illegal trade persists, with over 14,000 chimpanzees lost to poaching in recent years, highlighting both the ongoing demand and the stringent efforts to combat it. The financial costs of properly caring for a chimpanzee are absolutely staggering, even by billionaire standards. Chimp Haven, a leading sanctuary, estimates an annual cost of $25,000 per chimpanzee for food, housing, veterinary care, and enrichment activities. To put this in perspective, this annual cost exceeds the median household income in many countries, and this is for professional level care in a specialized facility. The housing requirements alone are monumentally expensive. Chimpanzees require large, secure enclosures to accommodate their strength and active nature. These enclosures must be chimp-proof, featuring specialized locks, reinforced construction, and safety measures that would make a maximum security facility seem modest by comparison. The construction costs for such facilities can easily reach hundreds of thousands of dollars. The ethical concerns surrounding chimpanzee ownership are perhaps more compelling than for any other animal on our list. To become pets, chimpanzees are often taken from their mothers at a young age, which can involve killing the mother to access the infant. This disrupts their natural development and social learning, as they rely on their mothers for up to 5 years in the wild. Chimpanzees thrive in social groups, and isolation in private homes leads to psychological distress. Many pet chimpanzees end up in cages before age 10, unable to interact with others of their species. The psychological damage from this isolation is profound and irreversible. Listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List, chimpanzees face threats from habitat loss, poaching, and disease, with only 170,300 remaining in the wild. Private ownership exacerbates these threats by fueling demand for infant chimpanzees, which often requires killing mothers and contributes to population decline. Even where technically legal, the practical challenges of acquiring a chimpanzee are enormous. The decline in captive breeding for the pet trade, coupled with CITES restrictions, reduces the supply of chimpanzees for private purchase. When owners can no longer care for their chimpanzees, finding suitable homes is difficult, as zoos often cannot accept them due to their lack of proper social behaviors. The chimpanzee thus represents perhaps the most emotionally complex entry on our list, creatures so similar to us that their intelligence and emotional capacity make their suffering in captivity particularly heartbreaking, yet so powerful and psychologically complex that they pose genuine dangers to human safety. Javan rhinos. The Javan rhino, with its distinctive single-horn, armor-like skin that seems carved from ancient stone and prehistoric presence that connects us to a vanished world, represents the ultimate example of how extreme rarity, absolute legal protection, and conservation necessity can render an animal completely beyond the reach of any financial transaction, no matter how astronomical the sum offered. The Javan rhino's story is one of the most heartbreaking conservation tales of our time. With an estimated population of approximately 74 individuals confined to Ujung Kulon National Park in Indonesia, these magnificent creatures exist at the very edge of extinction. Javan rhinos once roamed across northeast India, Southeast Asia, and the Indonesian islands of Sumatra and Java, but over the past 150 years their range has drastically diminished due to habitat loss, poaching, and human encroachment. The tragic reality of their decline is underscored by recent events. The species was declared extinct in Vietnam in 2011, after the last individual was poached in 2010, leaving Ujung Kulon as their final stronghold on Earth. This makes the Javan rhino not just rare, but existing in a single location that represents their entire remaining presence on the planet. The perceived expense of Javan rhinos exists only in the context of illegal black markets. In traditional Asian medicine, particularly in parts of China and Vietnam, rhino horns are falsely believed to have medicinal properties, despite a complete lack of scientific evidence supporting these claims. This cultural demand has historically fueled lucrative black markets, where rhino horns can command prices comparable to precious metals. However, recent tragic events have highlighted the ongoing threats. Recent reports indicate that up to 26 Javan rhinos may have been poached between 2019 and 2023, representing more than 1/3 of the entire remaining population. These incidents, facilitated by insider information and weaknesses in park security, demonstrate both the ongoing illegal demand and the vulnerability of this critically small population. What makes Javan rhinos absolutely unpurchasable is the comprehensive legal framework that protects them. Since 1975, the Javan rhino has been listed under CITES Appendix 1, which prohibits all commercial international trade in the species or its derivatives. This international treaty, ratified by 184 countries, ensures that no legal trade can occur anywhere in the world, regardless of an individual's wealth. The national protections are equally stringent. The Javan rhino has been a legally protected species since 1931, when the Dutch East Indies government enacted measures to prevent its extinction. These protections have continued under Indonesian law, with the species safeguarded within Ujung Kulon National Park, a nationally protected area and UNESCO World Heritage Site. Conservation geneticists estimate that a population of at least 100 rhinos is needed to ensure long-term survival, making every individual critical to the species' future. With only 74 individuals remaining, allowing private ownership of even a single animal would be catastrophic for the species' survival prospects. The absence of any legal market framework means that Javan rhinos exist entirely outside commercial considerations. Unlike some species that may have limited legal trade under strict conditions, Javan rhinos have no legal market. They are wild animals living in a protected national park, and no framework exists for their sale or ownership under any circumstances. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.